When you think of St. Ives in Cornwall, you probably picture that perfect seaside town, right? But that image, that's just the surface. Underneath it all, you've got this incredible place built on layers of faith, fortune, art, and even ghosts. So today, we're going to peel back those layers and find the hidden stories of this Cornish jewel. I mean, we've all seen this view. The almost tropical-looking water, that cluster of whitewashed houses, the old church towers standing guard. It's got to be one of the most beautiful towns in all of Britain, a picture that's been drawing people in for hundreds of years.
But that's the real question, isn't it? What's really going on in those winding, narrow streets? Beyond the beaches, beyond the art galleries? What stories do those old granite walls hold? Well, we're about to find out. Let's look past the postcard and into the town's real soul.
Okay, so to really get St. Ives, you have to think of it almost like an old canvas, a palimpsest, where centuries of stories have been written down, sort of erased, and then written over again. But you can still see the faint traces of everything that came before. Let's start at the very beginning, with the foundation. Long before the artists or the tourists showed up, St. Ives was forged by two massive forces, a really deep spiritual belief and the dangerous, often brutal hunt for treasure from the sea. The whole story kicks off with a legend that sounds more like a fairy tale. So there was this Irish princess, St. Aya, whose missionary friends sailed off without her. But she wasn't having any of that. She prayed, and the single leaf just miraculously grew big enough to carry her all the way across the Celtic Sea. She landed right here, and that's how the town got its name, Porth Aya, in Cornish, which just means Aya's Cove. So from that little 5th century spiritual seed, a really tough working town starts to grow. By about 1312, you've got the sloop inn serving fishermen. Flash forward to the 18th century, and the pilchard industry is just a massive economic engine for the whole region. And then, bam, 1877, the railway arrives. And that changed absolutely everything. And this was the heartbeat of the town for so long. Just picture it, a man, the hooer, standing watch in a little hut on the cliffs. He sees that telltale dark patch in the water, a shoal of millions of pilchards. His cry of "Hiva! Hiva!" would echo across the entire town, and in an instant, everyone, the whole community, would drop what they were doing and rush to the boats. It was a life of just waiting, and then sudden, frantic action. But what happens when the fish, the silver darlings, as they called them, what happens when they just disappear? Well, St. Ives had to completely reinvent itself. A new kind of fortune hunter started to arrive, but they weren't looking for fish. They were looking for something way more abstract, a special kind of light. And this wasn't just any old seaside light. See, St. Ives is on this narrow little peninsula, so it's surrounded by the sea on 3 sides. This means sunlight is literally bouncing off the water and the pale sand from all different angles, creating this incredible, almost magical glow. And this unique wraparound light, well, it became a total magnet for the art world. And this light attracted absolute giants. You had Alfred Wallace, a retired fisherman who, after his wife passed away, started painting his memories on old bits of cardboard, just for company. His raw, honest work was then discovered by Ben Nicholson, a pioneer of abstract art. And then came Barbara Hepworth, one of the most important sculptors of the 20th century. Together, they made this tiny Cornish town a totally unlikely hub for global modern art. And this building, right here, really seals the deal on that transformation. The Tate St. Ives. It was built on the site of an old gasworks, of all things, overlooking the Atlantic. It really cemented the town's artistic legacy, making sure that this incredible revolution in art would be celebrated forever. Okay, but underneath the layers of faith and art, there's another one. And this one's, well, it's a little stranger. This is a town of ancient folklore, really bizarre traditions, and, yeah, more than a few ghosts said to haunt its maze of streets. Okay, let's talk about the Knill ceremony. This thing is wonderfully bizarre. Back in the 18th century, an eccentric former mayor named John Knill was so worried about being forgotten that he built this 50-foot granite pyramid for himself and left super detailed instructions in his will. Every 5 years, this exact ritual has to be performed. And get this, it still happens today. A truly strange tradition connecting us right back to one man's very particular wish. And the weirdness definitely doesn't stop there. You've got Dead Man's Walk, where people say you can still hear phantom footsteps. There are stories of the lady with the lamp, a spirit forever searching the shore. And then there are the old superstitions that were taken so seriously, like how you must never whistle at night, because you might just whistle up a storm. These stories are just woven into the town's DNA.
But finally, after all that, we get to the very core. Because what really makes St. Ives what it is, it's the people. Their triumphs, their tragedies, and their amazing stories are what give this town its soul.
7. On January 23, 1939, in the middle of a monster storm, the lifeboat John and Sarah Eliza Steitch capsized 3 times trying to make a rescue. 7 of its 8 crewmen were lost. This isn't just a number in a history book, it's a permanent scar, a constant, painful reminder of the price this community has paid to the sea.
And this quote from Alfred Wallace, it just gets you right in the heart. He wasn't painting for the critics or for fancy galleries. He was a lonely old man, a retired fisherman, recreating the world he knew on scraps of cardboard. He wasn't making art, he was making companions. It's one of the most touching stories in art history, period. And of course, we can't forget Virginia Woolf. She spent her childhood summers here, and the view from her window, looking across the bay to the distant, flashing Godrevy Lighthouse, well, that became the central, powerful symbol in one of the greatest novels of the 20th century. The landscape of St. Ives literally shaped modern literature. So there you have it, a town founded on a prayer and a single leaf. A town built by the bones of millions of fish. A town completely redefined by a unique kind of light. And a town haunted by the stories of every person who's ever called it home.
And it really leaves you with something to think about, doesn't it? St. Ives has changed so much, from fishing port to art colony to a major tourist hotspot. And yet somehow all those old layers are still there. It makes you wonder, in a world that moves so fast, how does any place manage to hold on to its true, complex, and beautiful soul?